Welcome to Raging Moderates. I'm Jessica Tarlov, and my guest today is the editor-in-chief of All Rise News, Adam Klasfeld. Adam, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. I've been following you for a long time, and now this feels like the real thing, like you can read your tweets out loud to me, kind of. I wanted to start with, well, it's the latest ethics violation, but maybe seems like one of the biggest, with Trump asking his own DOJ for $230 million in restitution. Seems like it's testing the DOJ's integrity to a new level, which is hard to kind of compute, but here we are. The officials who could sign off on it are some of the same people who defended him in court. With Trump surrounding himself with loyalists and sidelining those who once prosecuted him, how much more can the system take before it breaks? And do you think that it's possible that the $230 million could actually be paid out?
Well, it's absolutely an astonishing story. The New York Times reporting on it says that this is over the notice of claim. So this isn't even in court. He is negotiating with himself. He realizes that he's negotiating with himself and has said so in a public statement, that one of the people who could be reviewing the decision is one of his lead criminal defense attorneys, who is now, of course, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. Could this happen? It seems like it's limited only by Trump's shamelessness at this point. This isn't something that is even in the courts. And to kind of clarify this even farther, the notice of claims that he filed are over two matters. There's the Russia investigation, which, of course, Robert Mueller secured a number of convictions pursuing that. There was a bipartisan Senate Intelligence Committee report that reinforced that, yes, the Russian government attacked U.S. democracy in the 2016 presidential election. So that's one of the notices of claim.
Is there no statute of limitations on that? It was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. There are so many reasons. That's one of the many considerations as to why that particular notice of claim is so flimsy and so outlandish. And to put this into even further perspective, one of Trump's former civil attorneys, Alina Habba, tried to discredit the Russia investigation in a vast RICO suit that she filed in Florida. And that case was so outlandish that a federal judge sanctioned both her and Trump for filing a frivolous lawsuit. But he has this notice of claim over his alleged injuries over the course of the Russia investigation. And that's how much money he wants in combination of that particular notice of claim and another one that is involving the Espionage Act investigation, essentially the classified documents case. And that's the very case that Bill Barr, his own former attorney general, who was very supportive of his agenda during his first term, said appeared to be very solid charges. So for various reasons, this isn't the sort of thing that in a normal administration one would expect an independent Justice Department would pay hundreds of thousands of dollars, let alone in these circumstances. One more point on this. You had the New York Times reporting. One of the attorneys that they reach out to for comment on this is Bennett Gershman. And what he said, a professor of law, that you don't need a law professor to describe how this is ethically complicated, that this just is very self-explanatory. But as we've seen, Trump doesn't think that there's any independence between him and the Justice Department. The Justice Department doesn't honor any independence between him and it. He's referred to himself multiple times as the chief law enforcement official in the country and says he has a right to do it. And it could cost the taxpayers now nearly $250 million.
Yeah, almost the same amount of money that the ballroom is going to cost, which didn't seem like a coincidence, though. The ballroom is being paid for by people who have contracts with the government. So that's another level of ethics violation. I want to talk about putting more stop the steal attorneys like back into the government. But just as an overview point, like, is there nothing that can be done about all these ethics violations? Because to the average person, it feels like there should be laws that can be enforced prohibiting this. And I get it that he's in charge of law enforcement at this particular moment. But don't you get the feeling that we're shouting into the void a little bit?
There's absolutely that concern. I think one of the things that people are noticing is that while Trump is very broadly immunized for all of his conduct in office, the people below him are not. And we're seeing in many of these actions, take, for example, the forcing out of an independent U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia, replacing that person with Trump's former lawyer, Lindsay Halligan, who had never prosecuted a criminal case. Well, people are already filing complaints related to that. They're pursuing investigations. And who knows what happens after all of this, if there is a different result in the midterms. There's apparently reporting that there are folks in Trump's Justice Department who are expecting that Lindsay Halligan might face backlash if the Democrats take control of the House after the midterms, and that she might face consequences for some of these actions. So yes, right now, does it look like there's going to be any avenue of accountability or redress? Well, certainly not for Trump on a criminal level. That's the Supreme Court's immunity decision. But we also have the people below him who are taking actions that might be very short-sighted in terms of their personal exposure, whether ethically, in terms of their law license or otherwise.
Yeah. She should also probably stop texting reporters and then saying after like a day, oh, this is off the record, by the way. That was crazy story.
It's incredible that Anna Bauer is a very good reporter and she covers the courts really professionally. And it's astonishing that apparently this extensive text message and then at the end, all of this is off the record, by the way, that she's covering Lindsay Halligan is pursuing the most scrutinized case in the world. And she doesn't even think to understand that these text messages could be printed. And when she asks a huge favor of Anna Bauer to essentially treat everything off the record, simultaneously insults her and impugns her credibility.
That's the Trump in all of them. And I could see, I guess, a world where an insurance lawyer maybe thought that would fly with DC when you're prosecuting Jim Comey, but that's not how it works. I wanted to get your take as well on the White House bringing on Kurt Olson, who's a former Stop the Steal lawyer, as a special government employee to dig into the 2020 election, which I thought was settled. Olson was part of Trump's team that pushed voter fraud claims, and now he's reportedly asking intelligence agencies for data about the same election. Could we play this clip of Trump talking about his plans to prevent 2020 from happening again?
We can never let what happened in the 2020 election happen again. We just can't let that happen. And so the way we go, I know Keisha's working on it, everybody's working on it, and certainly Tulsi's working on it. We can't let that happen again to our country. Look at what's happened where you have millions of people being allowed to come into our country, all because of a crooked election.
So he's not thinking about preventing in 2020 what we think about from 2020, which is somebody trying to subvert a free and fair election and fomenting an insurrection on the Capitol. He's talking about the fact that he thinks that he won in 2020. So please talk me off the cliff, because I'm already scared about free and fair elections in 2026 and 2028.
Everyone should be scared. The fact of the matter is he has staffed the entire Justice Department with loyalists. Kurt Olson isn't the only Stop the Steal person within the Department of Justice. There is Ed Martin, who he could not get a confirmation vote for U.S. attorney and is now this free-floating special attorney on the weaponization front, aptly named for probably the wrong reason that they purport. This is an alarming thing. We do know that part of Donald Trump's attempts to subvert the 2020 presidential election involved trying to corrupt the Department of Justice. That was part of the allegations in the original federal prosecution before the immunity decision came down. And it was also part of the Georgia case. And that was everything involving Jeff Clark. Here he sees he has a free hand. People are going to have to be vigilant about it. The good news is our election systems are strong. It is not easy to subvert a free and fair election, but it takes vigilance. It's not that the systems are strong on their own. They were strong because a number of people pushed back and said that they aren't going to find precisely the number of votes that were his margin of defeat in Georgia. They're not going to fail to certify election results that weren't in question. So it's alarming. Folks definitely need to be vigilant. But on contrary to Trump's claims after the 2020 election, the mass fraud on that kind of scale that would sway an election is extremely difficult to do. And as a matter of fact, just to end on this particular note, the key charge against Trump in the election subversion case was conspiracy to defraud, because the allegation was Trump knew that he lost. He is claiming otherwise, but he knew that he lost. And what is some of the evidence that he knew that he lost? Well, he retained and paid for 2 separate firms to search for fraud. The campaign paid for these firms to investigate fraud, and both of those firms said there is no fraud. So the people he paid, it wasn't just his government. It wasn't just every state election official. It was his own personal contractors that told him that there was no fraud that would have changed the election. And that knowingness, it's has to be in the back of folks' mind. The allegation isn't that he was just deluded. The allegation of the complaint with a mountain of evidence is that he knew and he tried to subvert it anyway.
Good times. Walk down memory lane, remembering all of that. Sad. Okay, I wanted to quickly get your take while I have you on this Ninth Circuit ruling or rejection of an en banc review of Trump's ability to send National Guard troops into Los Angeles.
So it is undoubtedly a victory for Trump, but just to set and level expectations here, en banc review is very rare. And even in the dissents, and there were 11 judges who would have wanted this en banc review to happen, they noted that some of their colleagues might not have joined in pushing for en banc review simply because we're in the early stages of it. That later on in the litigation, when there's a full record, maybe they would have heard it, that it would have been extraordinary for them to take it now. Now, 11 judges on the Ninth Circuit bench said, yes, it is that extraordinary to merit it, and that they should have gone forward now. I want to read from that statement because it's a really powerfully written one. They begin, "This case presents an issue of the gravest consequence, the peacetime deployment of military troops in American cities. For the first time in the nearly 250-year history of this country, the president claims extraordinary unilateral powers to order the state National Guard troops onto the streets of select cities in response to short-term, hyper-localized domestic protests of federal policy. This claimed authority clashes directly with the traditional strong resistance of Americans to military intrusions in civil affairs." So these are the judges saying, and it's a long opinion, it's even more fiery in other places, but these are the judges saying that even at this preliminary stage, that I understand the reluctance that some other judges on this bench might have to intervening right now, but they make a point to say later that after the deployment in Los Angeles, there was another deployment in Washington, D.C., the activation of the National Guard in Portland, Oregon, that this could expand. The time to try to intervene is now. This is not the end of the road. This is, of course, before the Supreme Court right now in a different litigation, the one going on in Chicago. But this is happening across the country. It's not the final word. And it inspired furious dissents by at least 11 judges on the Ninth Circuit bench.
And I also saw that 26 governors, Democrats and Republicans, former governors, wrote a letter about this as well, about what an infringement on states' rights it is to be sending the National Guard in when there is no declared emergency. Adam, thank you so much for your time. It was great to have you.
Wonderful being here, Jessica. Anytime.
Yeah.